Guys, capitalism has been around pretty much, it seems like, since the beginning of time, but no one talks about it or knows how it works, how it got set up. Why is the United States the world power for so long? Why are countries like Africa, with all of the natural resources underground, not in a place that's similar to the U.S.? In this video, we're going to talk about all of that stuff because we're going to be reviewing The Mystery of Capital by Hernando De Soto. It's kind of like a book analysis, but man, I got some good notes on this one. I've been taking notes on all of my books that I've been reading since like 2016. So we got about 4 pages of notes on The Mystery of Capital, and it's some gems. And if you stick around to the end, we're going to give this book a rating and tell you guys our thoughts on it, and if we believe that you should read it or not. You ready to hop in, bro?
Before we get started, after that fire intro from my boy here, capitalism, as he said, is the foundation.
Wait, you talking about little old me? Say no, go ahead.
It's the foundation of our modern society. But the inefficiencies still are widespread and ubiquitous across developing countries. And while we in the U.S. and Western nations have found a way to take full advantage of capitalism, you still have countries that, let's just use countries in Africa, for example, they don't have the same mechanisms, although they have the same physical properties. So I'm ready to get into it. Let's jump right into it.
Let's do it. All right, guys. So what we're going to be doing here, when I read this book, I underlined...
Hold on. I'm going to read it right now. Wait, no.
When I read this book, I underlined the most important things, just so that they stick with me. So we're going to read through those things, and we're going to elaborate on what's not self-explanatory. So let's hop in with the first point. Most of the poor already possess the assets they need to make a success of capitalism. Even in the poorest countries, they save. The value of saving among the poor is 40 times, but they hold these resources in defective forms, houses built on land whose ownership rights are not adequately recorded, unincorporated businesses with undefined liability, industries located where financiers and investors cannot see them. Because the rights to these possessions are not adequately documented, these assets cannot readily be turned into capital, cannot be traded outside of the narrow local circles where people know and trust each other. They can't be used as collateral for a loan, and they can't be used as a share against an investment. In the West, by contrast, every parcel of land, every building, every piece of equipment or store of inventories is represented in a property document that is a visible sign of a vast hidden process that connects all of these assets to the rest of the economy. Thanks to this representational process, assets can lead an invisible, parallel life alongside their material existence. They can be used as collateral for credit. The single most important source of funds for new businesses in the U.S. is a mortgage on the entrepreneur's house. That's too much, huh?
Bro, you read the whole book.
Let's stop there.
Bro, you were going to keep going.
All right, here, I'll just read this last
He
point.
just read the whole book, guys.
Just read this last point.
Oh, God.
By this process, the West injects life into assets and makes them generate capital.
And we're done. But no, you know what? It's funny you started with that point because that's what I just brought up with. Although they have the physical properties, and when I say physical properties, I literally mean they have the physical real estate. They haven't developed the mechanisms that are abstracted from the physicality of the real estate to be able to move, earn yield, properly track. And it all starts with tracking, really. And that's why title and escrow services are so essential to the real estate industry, because you have to be able to properly track and properly store that data somewhere. So yeah, that just kind of, reinforces that first point that we found a way to abstract value that we can't see from a physical asset that can't be moved, that isn't changing the physical nature of it when it's changing hands, but we found a way to move these properties across the world while keeping them in the same place, which is amazing.
Yeah, guys, one of a good quote that it's kind of related to this, but not. They say what gets measured gets done. If you look at it through this context, if you're not measuring something or keeping track of something in a way where everyone sees it or agrees on it, like it just said, you can't use it as collateral. You can't use it as anything. Just to give you a practical example, you know how you guys see like the NBA arenas or like the NFL arenas, and they'll be they'll give out like naming rights. The first arena to do that was the Lakers arena, the Forum. Jerry Buss in the documentary was talking about how he was like running out of money, so he was looking for creative ways to generate capital. So he thought, I think it was Northwestern, some Western. He named it the Great Western Forum, and he gave them naming rights, and they paid him millions of dollars, and then everyone else did that. Now, if it wasn't for a property system where he can prove that he owned that building, he wouldn't have been able to add that layer on top of it and extract capital by just giving them a naming rights to a building that he owns. So proven ownership of something offers a lot of different creative financing and just ways you can generate capital.
Yeah, no, that's a super great point. And, to be clear as well, so other countries that are not developed or developing, they do have ways of proving ownership, right? They have ways of provenance. The problem is the fragmentation that comes along with the way they do things. And so let's take a place like
Bro, that's a good steeple. You seem really confident. Go ahead.
So let's start here. No, but so let's take a place like Haiti, for example, right? I am 100% certain that a lot of owners of properties in shanty towns, for example, they have documents or some type of symbol that shows that, hey, this is my land, okay? Right here is my boundary, and then here's where your boundaries start. And so they do have some record keeping. It's just the fragmentation because that way is not adopted in the actual legal framework. And so that's why you have what you call extra legals. And so you got the favelas in Brazil, for example, you got the shanty towns in Haiti, and I'm not familiar with the other terms, but you get my point there.
Cool. Let's hop on to the next point. So this is kind of like a segue from the last one. So it says third world and former communist nations do not have this representational process. As a result, most of them are undercapitalized in the same way that a firm is undercapitalized when it issues fewer securities than its income and assets would justify. The enterprises of the poor are very much like corporations that cannot issue shares or bonds to obtain new investment and finance. Without representations, their assets are dead capital. Guys, you got to think about it. The entire world's money is like multi-trillions of dollars. But all of the resources that we use to like track things and generate capital from things, they have been around since the beginning of time. We just add value to them some way. And in order to add value to something, everyone needs to know that it's valuable. And the only way for everyone to know that something has value is either through a paper document that people can access on the internet, because we live in this digital age, or some kind of like property rights system that we're going to get into as we continue through this review.
Well, right now, for example, a great example would be the MLS, the multiple listing service in real estate. The database that real estate agents use and brokers use. Guys, do you think that there's a MLS in the favelas, for example? No. And it's not legal, for one, the properties that they have. So there's no way for someone who lives in the favela. Say if someone wanted to move from one side of the favelas to the other, they literally have to go and check out physically the property. And although we still do that in America, they have to go and physically check this property out and determine where they want to live or if this property is sufficient for them. There is no way they can sit at home and go on a universal database, aka the MLS, and everyone in the country actually would see the same thing. You could be anywhere and we all see the same number. If we all go on Zillow right now, for example, you're not going to find a property system like that even in a place like Haiti, or in a place, some parts, and also in a place like the favelas in Brazil. And don't get me wrong, guys, the world is not so black and white. And so even in Haiti, you still have a good swath of folks that are a part of the legal side of the property system. It's just that most actually sit outside of the legal property system, aka or i.e. the extra legals.
All right, next point. The poor inhabitants of these nations, 5/6 of humanity, which is crazy, do have things, but they lack the process to represent their property and create capital, like we said. They have houses, but not titles, crops, but no deeds, businesses, but no statutes of incorporation. It's the unavailability of these essential representations that explain why people who have adapted every other Western invention, from the paperclip to the nuclear reactor, have not been able to produce sufficient capital to make their domestic idea work. Guys, think about it this way. we have an Elon Musk here, but there's other Elon Musk around the world. Like you hear Warren Buffett talk about winning the ovarian lottery, being born in the United States of America. Had Warren Buffett been born, you know, in Africa or Haiti or somewhere, yeah, he could have, you know, got a plane ticket and found his way over to the US and still would have been successful. But when you're already here, it makes your chances of success way more likely. Like imagine if Elon Musk is over there and he's trying to raise money when it takes him a long time to even incorporate a company, prove he owns his home so he can't use his mortgage as collateral to borrow any money. Like I said, mortgages is the number one piece of collateral that entrepreneurs use in the US. Guys, where you are makes a big difference, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur. Fuck getting a job.
And Elon Musk was, you know, he was actually born in South Africa, so that just reinforces the reason as to why his family and him migrated here.
All right, next point. Not everything that is real and useful is tangible and visible. Time, for example, is real, but it can only be efficiently managed when it's represented by a clock or a calendar. Throughout history, humans have invented representational systems, writing, musical notation, double entry bookkeeping, to grasp with the mind what humans could never touch. In the same way, the great practitioners of capitalism, creators of the integrated title system and corporate stock to Michael Milken, were able to reveal and extract capital where others saw only junk by devising new ways to represent the invisible potential that is locked up in assets we accumulate.
I.e. derivatives. So super quick, Michael Milken, for those who don't know, he is very responsible in growing the junk bond market or high yield bonds. You'll hear those two terms interchangeably. And also, you know, people say what they want, right? I'm not sure actually what happened, of course, because I was not there and I didn't read court documents extensively. But I know he served a very lengthy prison sentence for securities fraud, and I believe he paid like $1 billion or something like that. He paid a crazy amount of money over time. And so, you know, think what you will, but it was people like him, whether the intentions were good or bad, today, those functions or those products that were created as a derivative of property at the end of the day, they kind of keep our society, the economic side of our society flowing seamlessly in a way. Especially these days, guys. We're talking about soft landings. Come on, this is crazy. But moving on.
Let's move on to the next point here. In every country we investigated, we found that it's very nearly as difficult to stay legal as it is to become legal. There still may be deeds or some kind of record in someone's hands, but the real ownership status of these assets has slipped out of the official registry system, leaving record and maps outdated. The result is that most people's resources are commercially and financially invisible. Nobody really knows who owns what or where, who is accountable for the performance of obligations, who is responsible for losses and fraud, or what mechanisms are available to enforce payment for services and goods delivered. Consequently, most potential assets in these countries have not been identified or realized. There is little accessible capital, and the exchange economy is constrained and sluggish. Guys, I'm pretty sure we're going to cover this in a later point that I underline. But in countries like Haiti, you know, South America in certain places, Egypt, it can take between 5 to 10 years to incorporate a business or to prove that you own your home. And you have to go through like between 50 to sometimes over 200 bureaucratic people. Like imagine, like we live in the United States, or I don't know where you live, but in the United States, if we wanted to start up a new LLC, we can be legal as a beagle in an hour, like, or less. Imagine if you're trying to start an LLC and you gotta wait 5-10 years. You're gonna run your business illegally, not because you're a criminal, but because it's just like, damn, I need to make something happen. And when you do something like that, it's hard for you to borrow money. And then when it comes to owning a home, it's literally the same exact thing.
I just want to add this. This may be a separate topic, but hey guys, I want you to realize how easy it is to set up an LLC in the United States. Just go online to whatever your Secretary of State is. Go online. It's that simple, and everything is self-explanatory. And so when you see ancillary or third-party companies that want you to pay them for them to set up your LLC, don't do it, please. It is too easy, and they don't make it complicated in the U.S. at all. So that's one thing that we have over everyone. And also, just to hammer home what Hernando said there, that's part of the reason that it's so easy for corrupt officials or politicians to remove someone from their home or to deny someone citizenship or to deny them the ability to purchase a home and sustain ownership of that home in a legal sense. And so that could actually take more than 20 years a lot of the times. And so that's why it's just a lot easier. Look, if I'm in another country, for sure, I'll be the type, I'll go build my big ass house somewhere else. It may take me 5 years. I'll have the house I want, probably not ideal location, but a pretty good location. And I don't have to go through a bunch of legal fees. All of my money is vested into my materials. And in my community, we understand our representational ownership. And so it's easier to do it that way. And it's because whatever the legal framework is in that country, whatever laws they have, it's almost like they purposely made it so difficult for an extra legal to become legal. It's significantly harder than starting a business. And he just told you it takes 5 to 10 years. So imagine someone who isn't legally a property owner trying to become a legal property owner. Because even if they have a house, because places are so corrupt, if they try to get something permitted, you could be in a situation, and we actually do this here too in the US, but it's probably more extreme over there. You'll be in a situation where they'll make you tear the entire house down and build it up in a permitted way.
Yeah, and just to drill this point home before we move on to the next thing, you're not just waiting 5 to 10 years. Like, it's not like, oh, you fill out something, let me wait, I hear something in 10 years. You're going to have to, like, imagine you go to, in the US, you go and you file for an LLC. You fill out something on the computer once, and then you get an email, and then your shit comes in the mail. Imagine you have to go, like, you have to take 5 years, and you have to go to different people and keep signing stuff. Go to different people, keep signing stuff. You have to keep waiting, keep going, and you're doing all of this, and it's not even guaranteed that the house, like, they could still say no 5 years into the process. Mm-hmm. So it's not even a guaranteed thing. It's really crazy.
That's a great point. And I don't know if you wrote this in your notes somewhere, but in which country was it? I forget the country, but essentially for someone an extra legal to become legal, they had 277 touch points over like 12 years. That's a lot. For us, we talked to one person, and we
don't even talk to nobody. It's just a computer.
To buy a house, you're going to talk to somebody. Yeah, and then you're going to have to talk to the lender as well. And so you're probably going to talk to 2 people and then your agent, so 3, right? Unless you are really involved in the process, because your agent might even talk to those guys for you. And so it's really insane. We're so far from 277 touch points. I couldn't imagine. I'll be pissed. I ain't buying no house. Okay, so the next point. Most people in developing and former communist nations cannot get into the legal property system such as it is, no matter how hard they try. Because they cannot insert their assets into the legal property system, they end up holding them illegally. The reason capitalism has triumphed in the West and sputtered in the rest of the world is because most of the assets in Western nations here have been integrated into one formal representational system. Yeah, so once again, it's kind of just bringing up different aspects to hammer home that point. I just talked about how it's so difficult, damn near impossible for an extra legal, someone who's illegal, to become a legal property owner. And part of the reason it's so hard, for example, is because they don't have that 1 to 2 touch points. They don't have that real estate agent and leveraging the MLS. They don't have a lender, which their job is to deal with these types of transactions. They don't have that. We gotten to the point where we can cut out the agent, and now we can go FSBO, or first sale by owner, and we could deal directly with that owner as long as we have a proper title and escrow service in the middle, or as that intermediary, to properly track and send and receive appropriate documentation from the lender, which is transmitted to buyer and seller, and that's where the transaction takes place. It used to have to be done in person in title companies. Now you don't have to be there. Like, for example, I've done a lot of real estate transactions. I've never sat in physically. People still do it because they like the feeling. I don't care about that damn feeling, boy. Just let me close the deal. You feel me? But anyway, yes. So it's very difficult for them to convert anything into a legal manner because they don't have a system at which that information can flow through. And so you see a lot of these projects, in the blockchain space that are focused on legal property rights or title and escrow service, and kind of all in one. And they're focusing on developing countries because these developing countries don't have that infrastructure to be able to transact properly. Sorry, guys, someone's like banging next door. You know, in San Fran, the houses are super close.
So this next point that we're going to get into, we're pretty much going to talk about how the U.S. property system came to be. It was because of gold. And, you know, you hear us talk about crypto on this channel all the time. I've been saying for a long time, crypto's number one use case is strengthening our property rights. If these governments around the world in these third world countries wanted to, blockchain technology can help them create a property system on an immutable, public, transparent ledger that proves who owns what, when, in real time. And it won't cost them a lot because it's a decentralized network that's already been built. But
unless it's a centralized network and the creator is a fucking asshole, which charges a lot. But they probably wouldn't have adoption though, right? So,
but these politicians and the leaders of these countries, they don't want that. Like, they rather keep everyone else poor while they stay rich.
Not everyone.
Not everyone.
But yeah, I agree though.
But all of them.
I agree.
No,
it's important to them to keep the wealth concentrated in some of these countries, and so they want very few people to have the access that they have because that's the only way life makes sense to them. I don't know why, but. Can't say they're evil because you can't say you wouldn't do the same thing if you were in their shoes. But from the outside looking in, it's definitely fucking evil.
Yeah. So guys, pay attention to this one. This is like one of the craziest things I learned in the book.
Hey, fair warning. This is a long point. So
it's a long point, but it's good. I am going to read it. It's like a big chunk. I think it goes.
It might take about 40 minutes. No.
Shut up. So, and this is how the 49ers got their name as well. So in California, after the gold rush of 1849, 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, there was some 800 separate property jurisdictions, each with its own records and individual regulations established by local consensus, aka everyday citizens, who were mining gold. Throughout the U.S., from California to Florida, claim associations agreed on their own rules and elected their own officers. It took more than 100 years, well into the late 19th century, for the U.S. government to pass special statutes that integrated and formalized U.S. assets. By enacting more than 35 preemption and mining statutes, Congress gradually managed to integrate into one system the informal property rules created by millions of immigrants and squatters who were coming to mine gold. The result was an integrated property market that fueled the U.S.'s explosive economic growth thereafter. And it fueled it because people could borrow money because they had collateral that proved that they owned it and everyone else knew that they owned it. The reason it's so hard to follow this history of integration of widespread property systems is that the process took place over a very long time, over 100 years. So it's not like, oh, just rinse and repeat. It's almost like asking LeBron James, like, man, how did you get to the... Maybe not LeBron James because he's gifted. It's like asking someone, like, how did you get to the NBA? Well, let me tell you, every day I trained and what I did every single day. Over 100 years. It's kind of impossible.
So, yeah, it's not like one person sat there like, we need to create this framework right here and drew everything out. It's literally what you would call the adjacent possible. You open one door, 4 more doors open. And that's kind of analogous to the progress that we've made as a Western nation.
Indubitably. So, now finishing this point off. But there was a price to pay. Once inside a formal property system, owners lost their anonymity. By becoming inextricably linked to real estate and business that could be easily identified and located, people forfeited the ability to lose themselves in the masses. There's always a trade-off. People who do not pay for goods or services they have consumed can be identified, charged interest penalties, fined, embargoed, and have their credit ratings downgraded, jeopardizing his reputation as a trustworthy party to his neighbors, utilities, banks, telephone companies, insurance firms, and the rest of the network that ties properties to him. So guys, pretty much how the reason why the United States is where it is because one, we discovered it was gold in California. So we pretty much stole the United States from Mexico. And then people were mining gold, right? They're mining gold. And since they found a spot, they're like, oh, it's gold right here. It's probably going to be gold deeper. Let me claim this land to my neighbors. So they claim the land. And over multiple people doing that over hundreds of years, the government was like, give me all them damn papers. Let me see who owned this shit. And that's how we got our property system. And now, then we have the world reserve currency on top of that. So now people can, it's almost like an NFT. Like think of an NFT. You can add value to something and now put it somewhere where everyone can speculate on it. Just think about that dwindle down like 10, 20, 50%. People can prove ownership. People can borrow money. And then everyone wanted to participate in the U.S. economy because we have the best property system.
Yeah, no, that was a good old angry man accent. I like that. I appreciate that. I think that's a good spot to end the video. But so also, guys, there's been squatters since the beginning of time, and over time, one thing that's provably true is that once you give people some type of representational / reputational system in which they're held accountable for their actions, inevitably they start to take care of properties. They start to take care of things they own with a different type of ethos. They love it. They take pride in it. Like my bike and my car, the fact that they're in my name. If they were in his name, I would care about my boy's stuff, but it doesn't feel the same, But the fact that they're mine, I take pride in that. And it's the same thing with where we live. We take pride in where we live, for example. And so we want to take care of the way the outside looks. And we live in San Francisco, so people do some crazy shit outside your house, literally. But anyway.
Literally, somebody shit it outside of our house the other day.
Crazy. What the fuck? But anyway.
And he saw her doing the damn shit and didn't stop her.
I didn't know she was taking a poop. Anyway, Jesus. If I known, I'd have, hey, get your...
Take that shit somewhere else.
There it goes.
Literally, figuratively.
But yeah, even a place like where I'm from in Detroit, or where we're from in Detroit, for example, we grew up seeing squatters just walking to the store. We could see that someone's living in this burned down house. I have one next door to me, for example, and it would be squatters living in there on and off all the time. And the house was burned down, so people go to some crazy lengths. But in Detroit, it snows, so I get it. But anyway, now I've never seen, except for that guy who was on the news like 10 years ago. Other than that, I've never seen a squatter move into a house in America and kind of just rebuild the whole house. Because, we have a law in America that if you stay in a house for 7 years, if you squat in a house for 7 years and no one boots you out and you invested money into this house and improved the property value, they're most likely just going to give you the house. They're going to give you ownership of the house. And that is, once you're a squatter for 7 years, you can go ahead and apply for that. I don't know how it works. I've never been a squatter, but you can gain ownership after 7 years of squatting somewhere in the U.S. It's not that way in other countries. And if they did have it that way, and people had something to work towards, because as you know, happiness lies in the hope of future achievement. If people have something to work for in those countries, such as, oh man, if I stay here for 7 years, I'm gonna do work on the house naturally. So I'll take care of it, I'll maintain it, and it'll get better over time. I'll help the property value go up. After 7 years, they can even make it 5 years in other countries, 2 years. Okay, now I'm able to become a legal owner, and I proved that, guys, I actually want somewhere to sustain a living. And so I'm proving it by taking pride in where I live. Although I don't own it yet, I have hope that this legal system that I'm currently in will award me this property or grant me the ability to become the owner of said property. So next point. The lack of legal property thus explains why citizens in developing and former communist nations cannot make profitable contracts with strangers, cannot get credit, insurance, or utility services. They have no property to lose. Because they have no property to lose, they are not taken serious as contracting parties only by their immediate family and neighbors, which is kind of what I just described, but you want to add something to that?
Yeah, so guys, it's 3 million people in the world, 3 billion people in the world that don't have access to banking services. And that's why. Banks aren't going to go to a third world country because they're probably going to get robbed every single day. They're not going to care about going to jail. They don't have anything to live for. And the banks are in the business of taking deposits, right? But these people don't have anything to deposit because there aren't any jobs, because it's hard to get a business, and this whole cycle that we've been talking about.
And you can't go through KYC if you don't have legal representation.
Yeah, and then it's just like, this is why I'm passionate about, decentralized finance and DeFi, because now, like, you have platforms like Aave and Compound. And I get it. It's over collateralized lending. There are private credit protocols that we talk about in this channel as well. But even with over collateralized lending, I know a guy in Mexico who sells, it's either oranges or papayas. I forget it. Let's call it oranges. He was trying to get a loan, but he couldn't. So I taught him how to use Aave. You take your stable coins, you deposit them on there, and now he was able to get a loan, use that loan to buy more oranges, sold them, paid off his loan, and he didn't have to lose any of his stable coins or any of his crypto. I showed him how to deposit ETH as collateral as well. This was during the bear market. So DeFi just opens up a lot of opportunities, and we're still in the dial-up stages of DeFi and blockchains and Web3 technology in general. So I think as things continue to get built out, it's going to help include people in the economy who really want to, make something for themselves legally, but they just don't have the infrastructure where they're based.
Yeah, no, man, with blockchain and AI at the same time, I feel like the adjacent possible is more applicable than any other time in history. And so you open one door with showing someone how to basically use collateral on chain and get more inventory for themselves without going underwater, and they can't have access to whatever their capital, if they have a capital system, they can't get access to it. That guy probably thought of like 30 more things since you guys had that conversation. Like, you opened his mind, you opened one door, and as he progresses through his life, I guarantee, maybe we should do a follow-up with that guy. I guarantee he started seeing more doors open for him. Moving on to the next one. If there are costs to becoming legal, there are also bound to be costs to remaining outside of the law. In Peru, for example, the cost of operating a business illegally includes paying 10 to 15% of its annual income to briberies and commissions to authorities. Add to such payoffs the cost of avoiding penalties, making transfers outside of legal channels, and operating from dispersed locations and without credit. The life of the extra-legal entrepreneur turns out to be far more costly and full of daily hassles than that of a legal businessman. Ooh, I can only imagine, because it's already fucking irritating. You wanna take this one real quick?
Yeah, so guys, basically, it's like gangs and like, there's no like police, so you have to pay like gang members so that they don't just come take your house.
Extortion, literally extortion.
Not only do you own your house and your business illegally, but now you have to pay gangs so everything else isn't just like stolen from you. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, for you tough guys sitting at home, even the toughest man, you don't want to be confronted with some of those organizations in other countries, because their violence is different from our violence, and their threats are different from our threats.
And they don't have to worry about going to jail.
Yeah, and so it is literally an intertwined aspect to the extra legal property system. Okay, next one. In every country we researched, we found that some 80% of land parcels were not protected by up-to-date records or held by legally accountable owners.
Fun fact.
Yeah, that's just a fun fact, yeah. And we did kind of touch on that too. Most people operate outside of the legal system in other countries. Moving on to the next one. In the US, up to 70% of the credit new businesses received comes from using formal titles as collateral for mortgages.
We already talked about that.
Yes, and guys, in this, even if you look at inflation reports, for example, the reason we've had such sticky inflation is because our shelter component, all those measured a bit weird, our shelter component has been one of the stickier portions.
Last point here, guys, and we're wrapping it up. Property also provides a legal alternative to drug trafficking. As long as the farmers remain illegal landowners, short-term cash crops like cocoa and opium poppies remain their only alternative.
And drug pushers will just force them to let them use their farm to transport through. Sometimes it may be easier, and they can't stop it because they're illegal anyway.
Yeah, for small farmers in some areas of the developing world, money advanced by drug traffickers is practically the only credit available. So that's the only people that'll give them money, because they know that if they don't pay them back, they'll kill them.
And now you kind of have to let them use your land if they want it whenever.
Yeah. And because their property arrangements appear in no official system, law enforcement cannot even find them. Never mind work out an enforceable crop substitution agreement. So it's, guys, basically what it boils down to is the history of capitalism started with land. People were able to prove that they own their land. Then they were able to raise money and build buildings on top of it. Inside of those buildings are businesses where you build cars, you manufacture oil, like all kinds of things. It all goes back to being able to prove that you own something. Because no matter what, you need money. You need to extend credit. Like the United States was built on printing money, extending credit. Like you hear about global reserve currencies rising and falling. What that is eventually they print too much money. Now we're in this digital age, so it's different. It's just numbers on a computer. Having no credit is 1,000 times worse than having too much credit. Just like deflation is way worse than inflation. Moral of the story.
And the cherry on top for that, guys, just to bring it home. So in America, we have found a way. For example, this house that we live in exists in like 4+ different places. And what I mean is this. We have a direct mortgage from buyer to seller or buyer to lender. So we have that one or first layer of abstraction. And then we have rehypothecation and we have secondary markets. So those are the second layer in which those are transferred between banks seamlessly. So you don't know who owns your loan or owns your mortgage. And it's like you don't need to know. It doesn't matter unless, something bad happens. But other than that, you don't really need to know who owns your mortgage. And it's getting rehypothecated all the time. Your house has probably been used for collateral like 10 times and you don't even know. Or at least the loan attached to your house has been used as collateral. Not the physical structure itself, but it's kind of you and your ability to pay and that loan that is attached to you. So you have that layer of abstraction. And then you have another one on top in which you can bundle these loans up into one basket. So you have a basket of performing notes, non-performing notes, and even someone as high as your Federal Reserve, they can buy these baskets of loans seamlessly. And that's all because we're able over time to integrate these abstractions from the physical structure of the property. And that is the main thing that developing countries are missing.
So with that, we hope you guys have a better understanding of capitalism and how the world works and why the United States is where it's at and why other countries, unfortunately, are where they are as well. If you got value from this comment, we ask that you drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe. If you have a friend, which we all do, that doesn't understand, how the world works, maybe they're getting into finance and they want to learn the nitty-gritty. I wish I would have read this book a long time ago. That's another thing we have to do. I give this book a 9.7 out of 10. And I only say 9.7 because at the end, it got a little fucking boring. I'm just be honest. But I definitely recommend you read this book. It was explained in like simple terms. You don't have to be a super financial expert to read it. What would you give the rating?
I was about to say, that's the first time we agreed on a number. I agree.
9.7?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah. It did get super stale at the end, so.
Yeah, guys.
Hernando, brother, please, we would love to have you on.
Yeah, we know you came on Bankless, so come on Know It Owls, man, and let us know what you know so we can know and let the people know,
And also, guys, look, I know you caught this, guys. He said, if you got value from this comment, he meant to say content.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Yeah, subscribe, like, do all that YouTube stuff, and we'll catch y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching.